Greetings, everyone. If you are watching this video, you probably already know that Jordan Peterson is launching Peterson Academy, which he himself has described as an online university. He also said that the purpose of this university is to cancel higher education as we know it. So I felt compelled to make this video. I want to keep an open mind, but I also want to ask some questions. These are questions that I am considering and questions that I would encourage others to consider as well before enrolling in this university. The first question is, does the teaching only consist of recorded lectures? Of course, one can learn from watching a lecture, but of course, there are many other forms of pedagogy that can be equally, if not more effective, such as interactive real-time discussions, applying one's learning in real-life circumstances, working in a lab, working in an art studio. So lecture is certainly one form of pedagogy, but it is certainly not the only form. So I think it is worth asking if this is indeed going to be the only form of pedagogy available in this university. The second question, do students interact with any instructors? Can students ask questions of the instructors? I think it is probably fair to say that asking questions is a key component of learning. So do students have an opportunity to ask questions? In particular, can they ask questions of the lecturers or any instructors of any kind who might be serving as a mentor or a tutor in this educational context? Do the instructors provide any sort of feedback to the students regarding their developing ideas? So again, this question of student-teacher, student-instructor interaction, I think, is a key question to ask and consider as we consider the nature of this university. The third question, how are students being assessed? What feedback do students receive? There will be multiple choice tests. We know that at this point. But is this the only way that the students within Peterson Academy will be assessed? And is that the only feedback that the students will receive? We can consider an example. So for example, there will be a course on Nietzsche. Is a multiple choice test the best way to assess whether or not a student understands philosophy? Also, is the percent of answers correct on a multiple choice test the most valuable type of feedback that a student can receive regarding their study of philosophy? Now, one might argue that you need qualitative feedback on your writing, on your argumentation, on your use of sources and citations, on the exercise of your imagination and creativity in making a novel, philosophical, or literary critique. Can this be done exclusively through a multiple choice test? Can the feedback that students receive on the multiple choice test help students to develop in this way? And a related question, are there any assignments in the course that students can receive feedback on at all? Are the students receiving any feedback other than the answers on the multiple choice test? Question number 4. Will students be learning actual skills? For example, will students practice and receive feedback on, let's say, the skill of scholarly writing, on learning how to write a computer program code, on how to work on engineering projects, on the skills of becoming a doctor or a physician, on the skills of becoming a teacher? Are there any marketable skills that are being taught within this program? Now, again, there's a lot we don't know, and I'm only asking questions here, but I don't see how this is possible if there are no performance assessments. There's no feedback on students' actual performance. The only assessment that we know of right now is a multiple choice test. So it does not seem likely that a student is going to be able to demonstrate proficiency in a skill through a multiple choice test. Question number 5. Are there majors or specializations within the academy, within this university? One benefit, we might say, of going to a comprehensive 4-year university is that you can, at least hypothetically, develop an area of expertise by taking multiple courses on a given subject. And the advanced courses, as one progresses through the courses in one's major, the courses advance in complexity and sophistication and ask the students to apply what they have learned in more and more authentic ways within the real world and within the discipline. To really master something, to really have a comprehensive and in-depth understanding of a given field, one needs to take multiple courses, multiple years of practice, and to experience mentorship and an apprenticeship. And so the question then is Peterson Academy a selection of unrelated courses? That is to say, one could take a course on Churchill, and one could take a course on nutrition, and one could take a course on men's rights activism, and one could take a course on Nietzsche, and one could take a course on evolution. But what is yet somewhat unclear is, what is the purpose of taking this mix of courses? Is there any sort of specialization that students can acquire or that students can choose to pursue? Or is the certification that one completes after 4 years intended simply to be an eclectic mix of courses? Question number 6. What are the learning goals of Peterson Academy? And by learning goals, we can frame this as perhaps the sentence: by the end of the time that students have completed their 4 years of study at Peterson Academy, students will be able to fill in the blank. So what are these goals? What are these learning goals? At this point, I don't think we yet know. I don't think that's yet been articulated in the materials for this university. What are these learning outcomes? Specifically, if Peterson Academy hopes to educate students in a particular way, what are the goals or the learning outcomes that Peterson Academy hopes to fulfill? One might say, and I know that Jordan Peterson has said, students will know how to think, not what to think, which is fine to say, but that is too vague to be a learning goal for the program or for the certification. Specifically, it's something that's too vague to be assessed. How will anyone, for example, the staff, if there are staff, of Peterson Academy, the students of Peterson Academy, the public at large, how will anyone know if Peterson Academy has indeed been successful? Well, to assess this, to assess if the Academy has been successful, we would need to know what the goals of Peterson Academy are. What are the specific learning goals for each individual course? What are the learning goals of the 4 years of study as a whole? Maybe the goal for Peterson Academy is, I want students to, I being Jordan Peterson in this case, I want students to sign up. I want them to have a good experience. I want them to feel like they've learned something. And that's fine. I think that's fine. But that is the goal of something like a streaming service, something like Masterclass or Netflix or the Daily Wire. If that's what it is, then why wouldn't that be fine? But that type of goal is different than the goals of an accredited institution of higher learning. Question number 7. Will students be supported in any way? So to talk about this, we'll talk a little bit about the idea of accreditation. So one important dimension of accreditation, as just one example from one standard from one particular accrediting body, one standard would read something like this: the institution pursues educational improvement through goals and strategies that improve retention, persistence, and completion rates in its degree and certificate programs. So that is to say that in order for a university to be accredited, it must support student success in some way, especially for students who are struggling. So then a question that remains is, do Peterson Academy students receive any support? Peterson Academy, as far as I can tell, informs potential students that you can watch as much as you like, whenever you like, and stop wherever you like. You can pay for all 4 years. You can watch as much as you'd like, stop whenever you'd like, play for all 4 years, or you can stop after 1 year. That's up to you. So this is clearly very, very appropriate for a streaming service, for something like Masterclass, for Netflix, for some other hobby. Pay every month, pay every year, stop anytime, get what you want out of it. But can the students of Peterson Academy expect to receive any sort of support? As we've talked about a moment ago, one of the criteria for accreditation is that there are supports in place for students. Right now, it does not look like there are any supports for the students of Peterson Academy, just like there are no supports for people who sign up for masterclass. If you want to watch the videos, you can watch the videos and you can enjoy. And if you want to sign off, that's fine. But that's not how accredited universities operate. Question number 8. This one's a little more charged, but I ask it with an open mind. Will the Peterson Academy credential, because remember, they're not offering degrees because they're not accredited, but they say they will offer a credential or a certificate. Will the Peterson Academy credential be a scarlet letter? So let me explain what I mean by this. If a person watches these lectures as a hobby, just like they might watch Jordan Peterson lectures on YouTube as a hobby, then there's no harm done. But a degree from a 4-year institution serves as a credential for a future employer or an institute of future study like graduate school. But if someone, a future employer or a future graduate school, sees the Peterson Academy credential on one's resume, what will this signal? What will this signal? Now, of course, within their circle of influence, there are many, many people, millions of people, who admire Jordan Peterson and who admire Brett Weinstein, one of the teachers, lecturers at Peterson Academy. So I'm not trying to say this in a pejorative way. There are millions of people who admire Jordan Peterson and who admire Brett Weinstein and who respect their knowledge and their perspective. And I'm not disputing that fact because it cannot be disputed. But I also want to point out within the context of this question that there are many people who do not admire or respect their knowledge or their perspective. Let's take the example of Brett Weinstein. Brett Weinstein has been publicly ridiculed for his incorrect, unscientific stances. For example, his stance on epidemiology, which has been debunked for years now, and yet he keeps doubling down. So an employer might ask, who taught your course on evolutionary biology? And then the future student or future graduate will say, I watched online lectures by Brett Weinstein. And the employer might say, who's Brett Weinstein? Or the employer might say, Brett Weinstein? You mean the Brett Weinstein who appeared as a co-host on InfoWars with Alex Jones? Brett Weinstein, the conspiracy theorist? This is what employers might say. That's all I'm saying, is that this is what employers might say. Let's keep going. Let's take the example of Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is very outspoken about his beliefs, and people love him for that. But the world will automatically associate a certificate from Peterson Academy with Jordan Peterson's views. And I'm not judging. I'm not trying to judge whether his views and his strong opinions are valid, invalid, correct, incorrect, simply to say that his views, which are very public and which he is very outspoken about, will be linked to a degree from Peterson Academy. So, Jordan Peterson's views about gender and sexuality, his views about climate change, his views about vaccines, his views about human diversity. Many people, millions of people, love him for these views, but many people do not. And that's just simply the way it is. Many people do not. And if a student proudly displays the credential from Peterson Academy, Peterson's views and his reputation are attached to that student. Many in the world are not going to see that as a good thing. And again, I don't say that in a pejorative way. I'm just saying that in an objective way. The credential is going to be linked to Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is linked to his outspoken views. And there are a number of people who do not see that as a good thing. Now, of course, if you watch these lectures simply as a hobby, then there is no harm. But a student who displays this credential is inevitably going to be judged in the same way that Jordan Peterson is judged. Peterson himself is very proud of his ostracism. But that same sort of ostracism might not be as lucrative for the average graduate of Peterson Academy. And this is just an objective reality. Of course, you don't have to tell anyone that you've graduated from Peterson Academy, in which case there's absolutely nothing to worry about. But if you plan to use this credential as a credential, then you might have something to worry about. Question number 9. What does devoid of ideology mean? Peterson Academy claims, right in the tagline, claims that it is devoid of ideology. We can interpret this as a direct response to the claim by Jordan Peterson that all institutions of higher learning have been taken over by the woke left. And Peterson Academy, in contrast, is not woke. But, and that's fine to say, but what does that exactly mean? Does this mean that the courses in Peterson Academy will not be covering issues of human diversity or social equity or any sort of critique of tradition? If Peterson Academy markets itself as being not woke, what does this mean exactly? But furthermore, can the courses themselves be truly devoid of ideology? Is this even possible? If so, how? Peterson himself is very outspoken about his ideology, namely political conservatism. and the superiority of Judeo-Christian values and the preservation of the Western tradition. Peterson is very outspoken about these commitments. Maybe if he were here, he would demur and he would say, well, that's not an ideology. Those are commitments, or those are my beliefs or my actions. This is how it looks like I'm living in the world, but it's not my ideology. Whatever. But needless to say, there are very clear things that Jordan Peterson stands for, whether we call that an ideology or whether we call that something else. He's committed to something. And most people who knows who he is can articulate what some of those things are, as I did, as he does. The Christian Judeo tradition, Western tradition, the importance of the Western tradition. So, similar to the last question that we discussed, this is not really a matter of forcing Jordan Peterson to defend himself. Again, he could come out and say, yes, I'm a conservative, but this is not an ideology. Yes, Judeo-Christian values are correct, but believing that is not an ideology. Believing that is just living in reality. Or yes, the West must radically return to tradition, but this is not an ideology. It doesn't really matter what he says, because what matters is what the public perceives and what, in particular, the future employers perceive. If future employers or future graduate school admissions look up who Jordan Peterson is, if they don't already know, they will automatically be able to discern what he promotes and what he stands for and what he is committed to, and therefore the credential from Peterson Academy does in fact represent something that is ideological. Whether Jordan Peterson himself claims that to be the case or not. You can put the tagline right at the top of the Twitter page, devoid of ideology, but that don't make it necessarily so, because the world will see it as ideological, inevitably. Question number 10. What does it mean to fix DEI? I don't know what he means by this, so that's why I'm asking the question. Peterson on Twitter in particular has been retweeting tweets about DEI initiatives in higher education for years. And the tagline that he always gives to, or the sign off, the signature to all of these tweets is Peterson Academy fixes this. And my question is, what does that mean? What does it mean to fix DEI? Peterson says this, but he never really explains what he means by this. If Peterson Academy is going to fix DEI, how is that going to influence what Peterson Academy looks like, or what the student experience is like? That's an open question, because again, I don't know what he means. Question 11. What does it mean to go straight to the employers? This is something else that Jordan Peterson has said on more than one occasion. He has said it in YouTube videos and advertisements for Peterson Academy. He has said it on the website for Peterson Academy itself, that we will go straight to the employers. And so my question is, what exactly does this mean? What does it mean to go straight to the employers? Will Jordan Peterson be setting up internships for the thousands of Peterson Academy students. Question number 12. Is accreditation ideological? The Peterson Academy website states, we are actively pursuing accreditation in a number of jurisdictions. However, we are not willing to compromise the technical merits, originality, or quality of our education to meet the requirements of any ideologically compromised expert body. So, reading this statement, one concludes or surmises that accreditation is ideological or perhaps ideologically compromised. And hence my question, what might Jordan Peterson mean by this? Again, it is not exactly clear. Are accrediting bodies ideologically compromised? What does Jordan Peterson mean by this statement? It's not clear, nor is he referring to any particular specific accrediting bodies, nor is he referring to any specific accrediting criteria. Does he have particular standards or criteria in mind when he says this? I don't know, but here is an example. I will present here an example of an accreditation standard from an accrediting body. And perhaps I'm using the best I can of my powers of inference to think maybe this is what he has in mind. Maybe he would read this and conclude this is ideologically compromised language. I could be wrong. I'm just asking the question, but it isn't clear what he means by ideologically compromised. So maybe this is an example. So here are some examples of some criteria. And again, this is taken from some sample criteria from one particular accrediting institution. And the criteria state the institution, so in this case, it's the accredited institution, the accredited university, the university that is being accredited. The institution's actions and decisions demonstrate that its educational role is to serve the public, not solely to the institution or any superordinate entity. The institution's educational responsibilities take primacy over other purposes, such as generating financial returns for investors, contributing to a related or parent organization, or supporting external interests. The institution's processes and activities demonstrate inclusive and equitable treatment of diverse populations. The institution fosters a climate of respect among all students, faculty, staff, and administrators from a range of diverse backgrounds, ideas, and perspectives. So, is this what Jordan Peterson means by ideologically compromised? I could imagine that Peterson might interpret these words as being loaded. Words like the public good, words like climate of respect, phrases like inclusive treatment of diverse populations. These are words and phrases that Jordan Peterson often publicly criticizes in very strong terms on a daily basis. So this type of criteria, these might be some of the examples of the standards that Peterson rejects, refuses to accept from the accrediting bodies. If so, if that is the case, then what can we conclude about Peterson Academy? Should we conclude that it is not interested in the public good, but is only concerned with financial returns for investors? Should we conclude that Peterson Academy rejects inclusive and equitable treatment? I don't know. I'm assuming the answer is yes, because Peterson has stated repeatedly that Peterson Academy fixes diversity, equity, and inclusion. But again, this is an open question. Are these statements, these criteria, examples of what Peterson interprets as ideologically compromised? So, in conclusion, why are these questions important? Is Peterson Academy just masterclass, just a streaming service, just an extension of the Daily Wire, a different form of Netflix or Apple TV? If so, I see nothing wrong with this. If this is just masterclass, then that's great. But if this credential being offered by Peterson Academy is not accredited, which it is not, then the people who sign up for this thinking that a 4-year subscription to Peterson Academy will be worth something to employers, these people who think this need to consider the 12 questions that were asked in this video. Especially before people spend $2,000, and probably even more importantly, 4 years of their life on something that they think is going to give them something that it cannot give them, namely a credential that employers will respect and acknowledge and reward. Also, people who sign up need to consider the question, what can a person actually learn from watching these videos in Peterson Academy? For example, listening to hours of lectures about Nietzsche and about Plato. And the answer is, of course, yes, absolutely. A person can learn something from watching lectures on YouTube. But given the way that Peterson Academy is set up, what you can learn and how you can develop intellectually and professionally is probably very limited, because as far as we know, again, this is why I'm asking these questions, but as far as we know, there are no interactions with faculty of any kind. There is no opportunity to ask questions of faculty or instructors. There's no hands-on learning. There's no ability to practice or master specific skills. There's no opportunity to receive any feedback on your writing or your developing understandings of the subject, outside, that is, of taking a multiple choice test. So that's worth considering and very limited. The only educational experience within Peterson Academy that we know of is listening to lectures. And there is a lot that you cannot learn from this format. But in the end, if you are enrolling in Peterson Academy for fun, as a hobby, for your own enjoyment and enrichment, then there is nothing to lose.